Football Live, man. Week 11. We are just rolling through the season. As always, every week is crazy. But we'll have Anthony Cervino in a little while to talk some of these reactions with you. We'll break down the Chiefs and the Eagles. Massive game on the Monday night stage. You will not want to miss that game preview. Anthony and I will get it broken down from an NFL perspective, a betting perspective, a fantasy perspective. We've got you set. Just hang in for that. Remember now, it's Thanksgiving week, so we'll have some show schedule changes. So this week, we're going to be really heavy on the Tuesday shows. We'll be on 3 times, so you catch replays when you need them. So the usual Tuesday show at 11 will be here tomorrow, as usual. We'll go over the Monday night game, recap that huge Monday night game that we'll preview later today, and then we'll go through some player trends and give you some waiver wire pickups. But then tomorrow at 2 Eastern, Adam Thompson will be on. He and I will break down the 4 holiday games, 3 Thanksgiving and the Black Friday game. We'll break those down for you. We'll get you ready for fantasy. We'll get you ready for gambling and just for enjoying those games. We'll really do a dive on those games. You can watch that replay anytime before the Thursday games and the Friday game to get you ready for those. And then because there are 8 teams playing between Thursday and Friday, that's a lot of fantasy start sit questions that'll be there. So I will do a special start sit show Tuesday at 5 Eastern. And then I'll still do the Sunday one at 11. But again, with 8 teams, there's going to be a lot of people with early questions because you have to make those decisions. And I know when we get close to the holiday, we're not dealing with Wednesday and Thursday. So we'll do that on Tuesday. So I'll repeat this later in the show, but I will post it up on my X profile at Jim Coventry NFL. All right. No, by the way, no shows Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday this week because we're doing 3 tomorrow. We'll get you set up. Charlene, welcome back. Yep, we're in the house. Nice to have you here. All right, so horrible in-game injury week for fantasy and for prop betting. Obviously, we started out with Thursday. We lost Mark Andrews in the first drive. We lost Joe Burrow in the first half. And obviously, that tanked a lot of fantasy fortunes. Obviously, Andrews, that was a crushing one. Burrow, and then that had a ripple effect on Jamar Chase and really everybody else in the offense. And then Sunday, almost as bad. Devon Achane, all excited for him to come back after 4 weeks with an MCL injury. Two touches, 4% of the snaps, done. Knee injury. We don't know what it is. The early word is it's not serious, but it was serious enough to get him removed from the game. And obviously, people started him. You got a point or 2, but that was it. Cooper Kupp, he goes down very early with an ankle. So again, hurt his fantasy managers. Kenneth Walker, an abdominal injury. And Pete Carroll's like normally the optimist. And he made some comment about the injury. I don't remember what the exact wording was, but they have a Thursday night game. It sounds like based on that comment, good luck seeing him. Now, if you had Zach Charbonnet, you benefited. But if you had Walker, oh my gosh, that was crushing. And then Aaron Jones, knee injury, apparently not as bad as it looked, but obviously great matchup. He wasn't getting enough work early. Never understand that coaching staff ever, but his chances of getting work late were certainly there. Not when he got hurt. Geno Smith misses a large chunk of the game. Elbow, tricep. They're talking both of those bruising, but Thursday game this week, and obviously he was out for quite a bit. And then Deontay Foreman, if you started him, him and Herbert were the lead backs. Foreman scores a touchdown. Foreman, first he was like dinging his shoulder up, and then he dinged up his ankle. So he was out for the rest of that game. So it was a mess. So again, fantasy football, in-game attrition. Hopefully it didn't hit you too bad, but these are the things we can't control. And prop betting, obviously, prop betting, I had Aaron Jones prop. That's like the 7th prop this year I've lost because of an in-game injury. Maybe that one wouldn't have cashed, but you have no chance. And Charlene had Charbonnet, so you drew the golden ticket. If you had him in your lineup, you benefited from over 20 touches in that game. Master J traded away Walker and Olave for Hall and Kyron. Yeah, I think you did well. Yeah, based on what we have now, yeah, he definitely did because if Walker's injury significant, that is. All right, let's talk some takeaways. And again, we'll have Anthony Cervino in soon. The Texans, this was a big boy win. They hang on to beat the Cardinals because things didn't go well for them. We bet the 5.5. We took the 5.5 with the Cardinals and covered by 0.5 point. But that said, it was a big boy win. Texans were coming off that big upset victory at Cincinnati. And I said, Texans didn't show up when they played Carolina a few weeks back. I go, this is the team as a young team that can afford, to look past a team that subliminal letdown I talk about all the time. And the Texans win, and that's big to be able to pull the game. Now, it worked out well because the Cardinals had multiple chances to score late, and I'll talk about them in a minute, but very problematic and I'll talk about them in a minute. But let's start with the Texans, the winners here. So CJ Stroud, this is the good and the bad you get with rookies, right? You remember when Andrew Luck was a rookie. Great rookie season, interceptions. Peyton Manning way back forever for those that are a little bit older than the young crowd. Peyton Manning had he was good, but he threw a ton of interceptions. Well, not that CJ Stroud has, but he threw 3 in this game. One was bad luck, but other ones maybe not so much. But he overcomes it. And that's what you got to see. These are the winners, right? Because the mistakes get cleaned up, even for most cases, right? But what Stroud showed us is the resiliency to keep coming back. He throws for 336, a couple touchdowns, easy matchup, but hey, you don't fault him for that. You take advantage of what's on the schedule, right? And so he did. But the 3 picks, that was not good. And hopefully he learns from this in the short term, because if those mistakes, because look, right now, the Texans with their schedule, they probably have a path to the playoffs. They probably are going to make it unless they have an implosion or a big injury or two. So, yeah, I mean, they're likely in at least as a wild card. And if the Jaguars, have an issue. Anyway, that said, but yeah, so Stroud won't be able to have the 3 interception games on a big stage game. But yeah, he was able to get away with it. Great, great young player. Again, superstar in the making, right? We love him. I didn't, and I know it was an easy matchup for Singletary, and I know he had an easy matchup against Cincinnati, and he went 30 for $150. And I felt bad telling fantasy managers there were other options they had, and Singletary's career he's had great situations, and it never gets sustained. But right now, and I don't know what Dameon Pierce's role is when he comes back. He's obviously been out the last couple games. But Singletary, 22 for $112. And again, great matchup. And he took advantage. He scores a touchdown, couple catches for 6 yards. So, yeah, almost 20 PPR points. So if you sat him, I'm sorry if I told you to sit him over other options. Hopefully your other options outscored him or scored close enough where it was a wash. But now I have to say, if he has an easy matchup and he's getting that work, I've got to say, all right, I'm moving him up into that, running back 14, 15 area. Again, I just never have the trust to put him higher than that because he's Devin Singletary. He breaks tackles, but he rarely gets yards after that, many yards. He's like 30, maybe 38th, top of my head, percentile yards after contact. So that's probably, but he breaks tackles. He does that well. It's kind of counterintuitive, but that's David Montgomery, right? Breaks tackles and then not a lot of yards after he breaks them. But there are players like this in the league. All right. And then, so Nico Collins, it was a good game. 11 targets, 7 for 65. He had an opportunity in the end zone. Great defensive play, kept him from scoring there. It was good to see him with a solid game. But man, Tank Dell, he got it done again. Double move. And it defies logic. He is an outlier. Based on one season, he's an outlier. Could it change? Yeah, it could change. But right now, I mean, he's like too small, right? His time speed, not very fast, but yet he's always running behind the defense. Double move, So, I mean, there's players, we see it all the time. Puka Nacua, right? His athletic profile, he shouldn't be on a practice squad, but he's out there and he's dominating in the NFL. So that's the beauty of the NFL. And that's why a lot of us don't get these right away. And when we first see some results, we're always worried it's small sample size. So but that's that right now. I have to reframe my take right now. I'm putting him in there as a wide receiver 3 with upside. I'm not putting him back in that flex range because he's had enough of these big games and he continues to get targets. He had 14 last week. He had 10 this week. And that ridiculous volume, and CJ Stroud's throwing enough. I mean, 37 and 39 times in the last 2 games. So yeah, we're going to keep riding it. Now, fortunately, those who started Dalton Schultz, and everybody knows my thoughts on Schultz, catch and fall guy, but he's getting it done. And this week it was like people were asking me, here, Jake Ferguson. And I'm like, you know what? Go with Schultz. Well, Schultz goes 2 for 32, but he scores a touchdown. The defenders didn't touch him when he was down. It was weird. So he ends up like crawling into the end zone after a catch that would have landed on the 2-yard line. But it's great for fantasy managers that use them. So again, Dalton Schultz, another week he cashes for fantasy. So great job for those who rostered him. Other side of the ball, the Cardinals, Kyler Murray still looks great, runs for another 51 and a touchdown. So that's going to be big for his fantasy value. And again, mobile quarterbacks, we hear it all the time. When you're running the ball, you are fantasy relevant to a great level. And so, his 214 through the air, but you throw in 51 on the ground, rushing touchdown, passing. Yeah, it's right there in that quarterback one discussion as Kyler Murray should be. Last week, he ran for 33 and a touchdown. What I don't like about the offense is, for some reason, they're not focusing on the stars enough. Now, they pulled out the win against Atlanta last week. They had every chance to win. But Marquise Brown, total of 9 targets in 2 games, while this week, Greg Dortch gets 8 targets. Last week, Rondale Moore gets 8 targets. It's fine with Trey McBride getting the targets. They need a middle of the field presence. But I just don't understand how Marquise Brown, and I know he's small, but he's been productive for a long time. And he's had that chemistry with Murray. And I know it's a new coaching staff, so there's that. But I don't know how you don't dial up Marquise Brown for more. Marquise Brown has suffered since Murray made it back. 1 for 28 and a 2 for 18. That's obviously not even flex level. So, but yet you had to start him because his production was there. So what do you do? I mean, next week, it's going to be a tough and start sit because he could go back to that 8 to 10 targets that with Murray he always would see. But now a 2-game sample size, it's going to be really tough. And James Conner, I just don't get this one either. They're not using him in the receiving game. He had 3 empty targets late, and they were just dump offs. Tony Jones was in on some passing out. Tony Jones, like practice squad guy, who's been like on 25 teams in the last 3 months, right? Yeah, obviously hyperbole, but he's all in. But how is James Conner not in the passing downs? And last year we saw he was like dominating in the passing game. So again, I'm just frustrated with the usage there. Conner ends up again. Numbers wise, he was fine, over 4 yards per carry, but they're empty. They got the ball in the red zone, and the Texans did a really nice job of selling out to stop Conner when they got in the red zone. And then it was actually stupid, though. I'm looking at the head coach after, on the touchdown where Kyler Murray runs in. I'm like, you're a fool. Sell out to stop Conner, but you got one of the best mobile quarterbacks who, as soon as he sees that, he's just going to dip to the outside, and you're 9 guys in the box. Now you got 1 guy on the outside, one little deke move, and he's in. So I get it, but it's Kyler Murray. You can't play it quite that way with him. But anyway, you learn, you live, you learn. All right, Jaguars, they get a big game for Trevor Lawrence. There were some positives in this game. I'll talk about him in a minute. But Trevor Lawrence has one of his best fantasy performances. 2 touchdowns through the air, 2 on the ground. And throws for 262. I bet the over on that prop in that one, it was like 240, 230 in that area. But Tennessee, we said, pass funnel defense, right? They're not the run defense they were last year and year before, but they're much better against the run. And the run blocking for the Jaguars has been abysmal. So it's like, yeah, you're going to have to pass against them. But what was interesting, I've talked down Press Taylor, the offensive coordinator of the Jaguars. He has been very easy to defend against. Calvin Ridley is normally left out on an island. Teams that typically double him. And with Zay Jones, who had missed a number of games, basically they had Kirk and Ingram in the middle of the field, but nothing vertical. And so it was just very easy to defend them. Well, it was good that Zay Jones gets back because they run these called mesh plays where players are running through the same areas to kind of like knock off defenders. And so it works out because you create openings. And in theory, it's been a concept in the league that's been working well. But when they didn't have Zay Jones, it was like either Tim Jones or Jamel Agnew, and defense aren't worried about them. So it's just basically, okay, well, we see Ridley. I mean, you see, I'm sorry, they were doubling Ridley. And now we see Kirk and they see Ingram, and it's like, okay, we'll just keep them from explosives as much as we can, and we're fine. Well, in this game, the beauty was they finally moved Ridley a bit. We saw him in a couple stack formations to get him from free releases and avoid some of those, island double teams. And the static routes they call him on, which are very easy when you know those are where they're coming. So Ridley was used a little bit more creatively. Oh, he gets 2 touchdowns in this one. Beautiful. Anthony Cervino, welcome in.
What's going on, man? How's it going?
Oh, things are well, man. Week 11, we talked about those in-game injuries. What a rough week that was. People losing players in the first quarter and then taking nearly goose eggs at Devon Achane.
Yeah,
that was a rough week. But right now we're talking about Jaguars, Anthony. And I was pointing out to the audience that, and I'll just quickly recap this. So Lawrence gets 4 touchdowns. And we know the Titans they're not the run defense they were, but they're way better against the run than the pass. So the Jaguars wisely attacked them. What they did with Ridley in this game, as opposed to just leaving him on the island on the side, we saw him in some bunch formations to get him some free releases, and then he was running some routes that were not just down the sideline, but he was running like starting in the middle and curling to the outside. They were just better routes to get him open, schemed touchdown pass. So Ridley comes to life. 7 for $1, 3 and 2 touchdowns and 9 targets. He even runs one for 18 yards. If the coaching staff is willing to be creative with him instead of making it predictable, it's possible they could turn things around. Thoughts on the Jaguars offense here?
This is the Jaguars I think we all expected all season long. And remember back in week 1, they looked like they were going to start out as this Jaguars team. And I think you're right about the predictability. I saw it all over Twitter with the Calvin Ridley routes, how they were scheming him open. And I think that's what they're going to need to do. They need to compete against teams like the 49ers instead of being embarrassed. And when those teams come around, there's a lot of them in the AFC. They're going to have to put points up. They're going to have to be creative. So we need to see more of what we saw against Tennessee, against the superior opponents.
Now, my biggest concern coming out of this game is the continued 2 weeks in a row. Travis Etienne was formerly playing about 80% of the snaps. He was getting over 20 touches. Well, all of a sudden, 2 weeks in a row, Dearness Johnson has been in insignificant snaps. Now, Tank Bigsby came in more in garbage time in this one. No. He got 9 carries, but it was like literally the game was out of hand and he came in. But Dearness Johnson had 7 carries. He had a target, caught it for 34 yards, but he was mixed in liberally, 24% of the snaps, and it had been Etienne's backfield. And the problem for Etienne has been that run blocking is horrific that they have. And so any defense that's decent against the run, he has to make something happen on his own. And here we go. 14 carries, 52 yards. Again, numbers are okay. 3 catches for 7 yards. So from fantasy, it was not a good day for Travis Etienne. What's going on?
You know, it seems like going into the bye week, this was Travis Etienne's offense. They come out of the bye week, and it hasn't been like that. Maybe this is the Jaguars looking ahead to the postseason and maybe trying to give him some more rest. That's the only logical explanation.
And when you point out in the preseason, that was my knock on Etienne, because last year we saw that when they gave him carries, they backed off on him for weeks at a time. This really limited his work. And then they bring in Dearness Johnson. They draft Tank Bigsby with a decent draft pick. And so that was just the writing on the wall. Okay, we don't see Etienne as a full-time player. And then through the first 7 weeks, oh my gosh, the other guys are an afterthought, seeing a total of 4 or 5 touches between them, you know, and where they're just giving him a breather, and that's all. So anyway, be concerned a little bit about that, but that is problematic. Charlene's mentioned 11 of the 13 home teams won. Wow, I didn't realize that. Titan side of the ball. Oh my gosh, Anthony, they ran 40 plays, 40 plays. That is like 1920s football. Yeah. In a bad game, you're running maybe 55 plays. That's a bad, slow-paced game or nothing. 40 plays. And really, they had no offense aside from a trick play. There was a trick play, and then Levis hurled one downfield. DeAndre Hopkins catches it for a long touchdown. If that trick play doesn't happen, they basically get a Jeffrey Simmons touchdown, and that's it.
This is a bad offense, right? And I know Vrabel, he gets a lot of, well, he's Vrabel. It's a Vrabel coach team, and it's going to be fine from the consensus. I don't buy into that. Like, I don't put Vrabel into the Mike Tomlin, Bill Belichick, or Harbaugh tier where, okay, they'll be fine. You give him a mulligan. I just don't see that. And I thought this team was going to struggle, and it has struggled mightily. And I think it starts with Derrick Henry. They can't run the football. I believe PFF had the offensive line of the Titans ranked dead last, and it shows with Derrick Henry. He's at the age where he could probably still get the job done, maybe if he was in Dallas or deep with no lines, but he needs a little bit of help now.
Oh, man.
You can't run the ball, and then you're stacking the box, and you're sending pressure against Will Levis. It's been a complete disaster.
I mean, like Levis got lucky with the touchdown. It was a trick play, and God bless him, he hit it. And if somebody started for fantasy, they wiped their brow and said, I got away with one. But even Hopkins, he had a 3 for 27 on 8 targets last week. If the trick play doesn't happen here, he's 3 for 19. That's about all it is. So that said, Can you obviously you're starting Hopkins, but are you starting him now as a low-end wide receiver 3? Is he really even a wide receiver 2 anymore in this offense?
I don't even know what he is in fantasy football at this point because he's so volatile, where unless he gets you those big touchdowns, he's probably not going to give you much. Look at yesterday's Will Levis statistics. He was 13 for 17. 13 for 17 in a game that they were trailing.
Yes, because they ran 40 plays. They ran 40 plays. 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. And that's a problem, right? Now,
why not trade Derrick Henry? I know this is the trade deadline, but why? Why retain this guy when you could have at least recuperated an asset? I don't care what the asset was.
Lack of vision, total lack of vision. Maybe they thought Levis would be a thing. I don't know. Derrick Henry, let's spend a moment on him. Last week, 11 carries, 24 yards. He lost 4 yards on 1 reception. This week, 10 carries, 38 yards, a catch for 6. This team's not scoring points. They get in the red zone deep and they throw Jeff Simmons a touchdown. Oh, thank you, everyone. But is this team going to score enough touchdowns for Henry to even score 3 the rest of the way? And if you're in a start-sit situation, is Henry outside the top 24 running backs right now?
I mean, this upcoming game against Carolina, look at Pollard finally got in the end zone and say, yeah, I think we could put him in against Carolina and Indy, sure. But some of these other matchups like Miami week 14, this defense is coming alive. Houston, there's some matchups where you can use Derrick Henry, but like just the Jacksonville one historically in Henry's career usually crushes the Jacksonville Jaguars. And that is not the case.
So I want to give a reminder before we get to the next game. Remember, this is with the holiday week. There won't be shows Wednesday, obviously Thursday and Friday, Black Friday, but we're doing 3 shows tomorrow. The regular show at this time tomorrow. And then we're previewing the 4 holiday games, including a Black Friday game. That'll be 2 Eastern, but you could catch that replay anytime. That'll be for fantasy and for gambling. And then because there's 4 games going off early, we'll do a start-sit show at 5 Eastern on Tuesday. So we'll have the usual one on Sunday, but so many players being started, so people need to have that information. All right, Anthony, let's get to our next one here. 49ers. They basically – so we remember how the Chiefs used to be. They would run these few play drives, score in a minute, and they were just putting points up on the board. 49ers, 27 points, not earth-shattering against the Bucs. Brock Purdy only throws the ball 25 times in this game, 333 and 3 touchdowns, and they pretty much ignored all the ancillary personnel. Elijah Mitchell got 4 breather carries for McCaffrey. Juwan Jennings got 1 target. Other than that, every play went to McCaffrey, Ayuk, Kittle, or Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
This is the Stars and Scrubs team we talked about. This is an offense right now that And Todd Bowles was sending the kitchen sink. They were sending the blitz, and Brock Purdy was just finding his superstars. Because when you blitz, and that might be the formula teams want to try, but one of those 4 superstars is going to have light and coverage because the blitz compromised somewhere, and Purdy is pushing the correct buttons. Could this offense be unstoppable?
Yes, it could. And you bring up they ignore a lot of the complementary pieces. That's normally how the 49ers are. So
this is the biggest degree of that, though. It's like there's normally 3 targets for Jennings, a couple, here there was like nothing. But go ahead, you're right. You are right.
The other side of it is, and we saw this during that 3-game losing streak, because the 49ers going into that, they've been fairly healthy. And when you lost Deebo and you lose Trent Williams, we saw the offense have some hiccups, especially like I think you even a bigger loss than Christian McCaffrey might be a significant loss of time with Trent Williams. I think Trent Williams, the glue that might hold this offense together, because Brock Purdy does not play well against pressure.
Nope.
And we saw when Williams was out, this is a different, little bit scarier version of Brock Purdy. But in the same breath, I know this is outside of fantasy, but they suffered a really big injury on defense with that safety, Halufa. That could potentially really hinder that defense, where now, because their secondary was already an issue, and he was their best player standing, and he can also play well against the run and create the turnover. Without him, if they don't get the pressure going, this might be a defense that you can really throw on.
100%. And with that injury is very significant. And the hope for the 49ers is Chase Young was making a difference yesterday. And Randy Gregory could be the player that we've seen in flashes. And then obviously we got Hargrave on the interior. If that unit can come together and be a monster, like Philadelphia's defense last year, the monstrous passers they had, if they could be that, the corners aren't going to have to cover for very long. That's going to be what they have to count on.
Philly also had an outstanding secondary last year.
They did. They totally did. Yes. They were vulnerable in the middle, but yeah, last year, and we'll point this out when we break down the game later, but those corners who played elite last year, they both are having bad years. They're not playing well. We'll talk about that later, but good point on that. We won't spend much time on the Buccaneers, but I'm going to give Baker Mayfield a lot of credit here. Look, he was under a ton of pressure. He's been protected all year. They lost their left tackle early in the second half, and then the pressure got worse at that point. But he hung in, and he was overmatched, but he throws for 246 and a touchdown. Baker Mayfield, I have been impressed with him this year. He's not the train wrecker, but he's not a world beater, but he is. And look, in this day and age of horrible quarterback play, he's acceptable. Any words there?
This might be the most impressive version of Baker Mayfield that we've seen. Because during his Cleveland days, Cleveland always had a pretty good roster where I think he has a little bit less to work with, maybe not at wide receiver, but some of the other pieces, especially a defense. That defense used to battle him out a little bit when he was winning in Cleveland. But this is the best version that I remember of Baker Mayfield. So, yeah, he deserves a lot of credit. He was just mismatched yesterday against the 49ers, as many teams are.
Yeah, and he took some shots at the end zone. There were a couple that didn't work out later, but hey, they were in comeback mode. They were trailing. Again, hats off to him. He was under incredible duress as the schedule lightens. I do think he's right fantasy-wise, he's right around that top 15 quarterback because they do throw the ball. Quickly on the Bears, it was nice to see Justin Fields run for 100 yards. The Lions' defense is no joke. Jared Goff turned it over 3 times, and that made that game weird. But outside of that, Fields runs for 100. And I was telling people, DJ Moore, when Justin Fields comes back, he is going to be one of those players you're going to count on every week. And in 4 of the last 5 games that Moore has played with Fields, he's posted at least 96 yards. He has been outstanding with him. That chemistry is great. And so I am excited for DJ Moore down the stretch as long as Justin Fields can stay on the field. Anything there?
Yeah, this pairing, people thought it was going to be a league winner. Justin Fields yesterday, surprisingly, only ran right around 22 quarterback points. And that's for when he like you said, he rushed for over 100 yards. And usually, I think that should usually give you more, but he didn't get in the end zone rushing, and he only accounted for 1 total touchdown. But on a normal basis, if he's playing most teams outside of that Lions defense, that's probably at least a 32-point day.
Exactly. Yes, because he got knocked out of the Minnesota game and he had very limited volume in that game. But the 2 prior games, and they were against weak opponents, he had 32 plus fantasy points in both of those games. So 22 against the Lions on the road, coming back in his first game from the thumb. Very impressive. But if you're asking me a DJ Moore, like I said, people asked me yesterday, he's an automatic start unless you have something ridiculous ahead of him. But DJ Moore's wheels up. Let's do one more game here. Well, we got time. We're good here. Kenny Pickett. Oh my goodness. Facing the big boys here, and it is not looking good. I did tell people to bench Deontay Johnson. I said Cleveland plays a lot of man. Deontay's very good against zone. He is not going to have much room to operate against man, and with the pass rush, it's going to be problematic. Kenny Pickett goes 15 for 28, 106 yards. Certainly doesn't get the ball in the end zone for them. And the passing game basically destroyed. I will point out Pat Freiermuth has played 5 full games this year. In 4 of those games, he has less than 10 receiving yards. He had a 40-yard and a touchdown game in there as well. He is not viable in fantasy lineups right now. Probably not worthy of a roster spot. Pickett and Freiermuth first.
Disaster, right? And I know that the first level to blame is Matt Canada. I just don't think Kenny Pickett's it, right? Because as bad as the OC may be, he has so many nice weapons. When you look at Deontay Johnson, Pickens, and the running backs and Freiermuth, most quarterbacks would love that arsenal. And I saw a lot of tweets going around. Oh, this quarterback has more touchdown, games with more than one touchdown pass than Kenny Pickett. And it's like Anthony Richardson, who played like 5 games.
You're correct.
This is a problem, Pittsburgh, right? And it's far beyond Matt Canada. It's your quarterback.
It 100% is. Now, Najee Harris, 12 for 35. Jaylen Warren has 9 carries, goes off. I told people going into this game, Cleveland is a good run defense, but every week you take the explosive running back and you bet the over on the longest rush. That is cashed in almost every game. They are very problematic at stopping second level runs. And that's been every single week for the most part. And so Jaylen Warren, easily runs for like a 75-yard touchdown. And he had another explosive run outside of that. So Jaylen Warren's been very, very nice. And I say the changeup always does well because they play at Najee Harris speed, and then you bring in like last year, Tony Pollard coming in for Zeke, boom, 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 all over the place. Well, Warren, that was a definite opportunity for him. Harris did play 57% of the snaps, to 45 for Warren. But again, Warren had a perfect matchup for his explosive game, and he cashed in well. Impressive player. Anything on the backfield?
Shockingly, I've been a Najee Harris guy, but Warren, it's hard to not buy into the player Jaylen Warren is. I don't want to discount Najee Harris. I think he certainly faces the stacked box more than most. But the skill set of Warren and the explosiveness, I think, is just better suited for the defense that they're throwing at Pittsburgh right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And not much to say about the Cleveland offense. And look, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I still have no comment on him. First game he played, he was shuffled in at the last second. They played Baltimore. You're not going to have any success. Playing Pittsburgh, they probably wanted to boot him out on boot action, but not with TJ Watt. You can't do that. And they didn't. And so I want to see Dorian Thompson-Robinson in a regular game where he's not facing the Browns or the Steelers. And I want to see if at least the mobility. Now, that's a Joe Flacco doesn't come in right away. But so all that said, and I guess I'll ask you that first. That's the only thing I want to ask about this. Is Joe Flacco going to be quickly under center for them? Does it take a couple weeks, or is it going to be this week, or are they going to give Thompson-Robinson a little bit longer? What are your thoughts?
Maybe they try to get Joe Flacco acclimated. The Browns are 7-3, and I get the division that they play in, but look at Kenny Pickett. He can't get the job done there. Joe Burrow's gone in Cincinnati, and honestly, I think the loss of Mark Andrews hurts the Baltimore Ravens a lot. To where maybe the Browns aren't feeling that much pressure. Right now, they're the 5 seed. And they've managed they've only lost 3 games. And a lot of those games are played by PJ Walker and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And I want to bring this up. I don't know if this era of football exists, but the Browns team, could they be almost like the Dungy Buccaneers, where that defense is good enough to where you can have like a Brad Johnson type of quarterback do enough to go get you to a Super Bowl?
I sure hope so. Because I want to see, and this is the perfect year.
Flacco's like a Brad Johnson. That's the comp. Yes. I'm like, hey, Brad Johnson at the end.
The league has rolled back offensively to 2012. This is literally 2012. This is not the last 10 years of offensive. So this is the year where you could see the Browns getting them deep into the playoffs. And here's the funny thing. I was at obviously people heard me all summer, but I was at the RotoWire, which unfortunately you missed that one because they were plane issues. Yes. Hate to bring up a sore spot. But so anyway, they had all these stickers that we had to put on our lanyard. They were NFL teams. I took the Browns helmet and I put it on my thing, and people are like, "You're a Browns fan." And I'm like, no. My biggest tickets are on the Browns to make the playoffs this year. That was my big bet. I pushed that everywhere. And then they lose Chubb. And then Watson didn't really do what we thought. I hoped he would. And yet that ticket has a great chance of cashing. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, I like what they're bringing to the table right now. And I'm a defensive guy at heart. So seeing them really win this ugly style of football, even the kickers making great it's fun to see.
They just got to get enough offense. They got to find somebody, whether it's Flacco or something, to get the ball enough to Amari Cooper to be able to give them a chance to get a couple explosives because they're going to need a little bit of that. All right. Very quickly. So Saquon Barkley, he was in a lot of start sit questions. And there were some where people had these, in small leagues where they had a real stacked up roster. And it was easy to say, otherwise, well, maybe this person's ahead of Barkley. But in most of them, I was telling them, look, it's hard to sit Saquon Barkley because he will eventually find a way to get something done. Did not see this happening. 14 carries, 83 yards. He catches a longer touchdown, catches a second touchdown pass, ends up with a huge fantasy day, over 25 PPR points. And then Tommy DeVito somehow puts together 246 and 3 touchdowns, the 2 to Barkley, of course. And then he gets Slayton, very weird place. Slayton somehow, I don't know what he did to freak out that defender, but the defender made this weird move and he walks in. Beautiful. What do you see with the Giants?
I actually think DeVito, because he played well against, I won't say well against Dallas, but he ended up scoring 2 touchdowns in garbage time against Dallas. That's still a very prideful defense. They don't take a play off. And I actually had Barkley as a start. I didn't see him going off the way he did. But when Washington moved off, what was it, Montez Sweat and Young, they were already vulnerable on the back end, and that makes them really vulnerable on the front. You can do what you want to this defense. And I was asked a question on my show at Face Off, and it was like, well, who's the bigger lock of the day, the Commanders or the Texans? And I said probably the Texans, because the Commanders game, if there's a game where the Giants win, this is it,
man.
It's the division, whatever, they know each other. It was an ugly game earlier in the year where the Giants won. I'm like, they're going to sweep them. I just had a gut feeling that this was a game where, because again, Washington's defense, they can't stop anything right now. They got rid of their best players. So Barkley's probably going to get going on the ground, and DeVito probably pick apart that bad secondary. Rivera's got to go.
Yes. Oh my gosh, terrible. I wish I would have talked to you earlier. I played 2 Survivor leagues this year, and I made it through all the way to last week. And then one league I took the Lions, sweated that one out. The other one I took the Commanders, and I just Tommy DeVito. I'm like, come on, there's no way Tommy DeVito beats this team.
He's the best quarterback in New York right now, not named Josh Allen. Right? I mean, he's better than Josh. I'll take DeVito over Zach Wilson. Yeah, I'll take DeVito over Daniel Jones. What was it? This offense did not move the football like this with Daniel Jones, in my opinion. It just didn't.
Oh my! Look, the Giants were the biggest loser of the day. By winning that game, that hurts their opportunity to get one of the elite quarterbacks coming out of that draft. From what I'm hearing, I don't follow collegers too. Drake May and there's Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
And that win, that was hurtful to them because, that's going to make me a problem because Carolina's going to be way up there. So they got to be careful here because if they win too much.
Carolina goes and takes another one, though? Do they pull
the Bears have their pick? The Bears have their pick, right?
Okay.
The Bears have their pick. Yeah. So the Bears love it. The Bears have their pick. The Bears have their own pick, and the Bears lost that game. The Bears could have the 1 and 2 pick because Arizona, they're going to win some games down the stretch.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Sam Howell. So for fantasy, he gets it done. He always gets it done for fantasy. 255. He runs for a 35, and he runs in a touchdown. Throws 3 picks. Kills his at last drive of the game, trying to get them down for a game-winning score. Throws a pick 6, blows that one. For fantasy, yes, he's right around that top 12 discussion, especially if there's bye weeks and things. You're starting him. He's throwing a ton. Another 45 passes. He has 50 pass attempts in numerous games. Is he going to be their starter, and is he going to be good next year?
It depends on what their future is, right? Because I don't see Ron Rivera coming back. At least he shouldn't. And this is a new owner. I think he's going to want to get, depending on who the head coach is. I think they blow it up. Maybe they go get a quarterback. Maybe somebody like Cousins is out there. I don't know if you go ahead with Sam Howell. I just, he's a numbers guy, but so is Blake Bortles. He was a numbers guy too.
I know. It's tough.
Blake Bortles was the top 5 quarterback 1 year in fantasy.
Right. I remember that. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, Eric Bieniemy has done a great job. Yes. I want to give him a ton of credit because he really made Howell improve quickly. He gets the ball out much quicker. The sack, now he took a lot of sacks yesterday, but the sacks have been down recently. But yeah, I'm overall concerned about him. There's a lot of things. Now, could he make a jump from this year to next year? Because this is technically his real rookie year. Last year he made that week 18 start. Yeah. But so he could have a second year jump. I'm going to be interested to see how this works out. Monday Night Football, Anthony. We've had this one circled on the calendar since preseason. This one I think is a Manning cast on ESPN Plus. I might watch the Manning cast on this one. It might be the way to go. Chiefs are -3, hosting the Eagles. Over and under is 45. We'll talk about betting this at the end. And when we look at this game, styles make fights. Oh, one fantasy point I want to make for people before we get into the game. Richie James is probably going to be active for this game. If you're in a deeper league and he's on your waiver wire, deeper league, he could be a factor down the stretch. Sky Moore's been terrible. Richie James is a very good slot receiver. He could make a lot of things happen for them. If you're in a deep league, a lottery ticket, if you could pick him up today, is not the worst idea in the world. Anything on that, Anthony?
I actually drafted a lot of Richie James in best ball. Mr. Irrelevant type of deal. So, yeah, I mean, now that he's back into the mix, why not? Sky Moore has not earned his roster spot or at least any playing time. And we've seen Richie James produce with Chicago and the Giants, and he's put up some pretty big fantasy games.
He has.
Bad situations.
In this offense, so it's a lottery ticket, but at this time of the year, there aren't many like this coming up. All right, I said styles make fights. Let's start with the Eagles offense. First thing, no Dallas Goedert. So realistically, Steve Spagnuolo, his game planning is a lot easier here because when you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert, that's a trio to worry about. When you go to Jack Stoll, Grant Calcaterra, or maybe Albert O, all of a sudden now, we're not worried about the middle of the field anymore. It's just we've got to deal with these two receivers. Spagnuolo has done much scheming to take away things from offenses. So there's that. But realistically, I think the biggest advantage for the Eagles in this game, the Chiefs, I know there are people that cite certain numbers. It's not a good run defense. And that offensive line for the Eagles has a definitive massive advantage here. Now, we haven't had big games on the ground from Swift since early in the season, but I think this is a game where they would be smart to lean on the running game and slow the game down. First thoughts on the Eagles offense. What are you expecting to see from the Eagles on offense?
No, I think you're bringing up a good point because on paper, Kansas City's run defense looks a lot better than what it really is.
Yes.
And getting DeAndre Swift going, getting this running game going, like it's been okay, but it hasn't popped since early, as you've said. That's how you're going to get to throw on the Chiefs because as elite Philly's weapons are, Kansas City plays really good defense on the back, and they can also pressure you. And I also think, do we really know how healthy Jalen Hurts is? Is he going to be able to move the way we normally see Jalen Hurts? He was banged up a little bit against Dallas, and I think he might have been banged up going into that Dallas game. And I know they had their bye, but if they don't have to show their cards, like that, nobody knew anything about Burrow either. Not saying a Jalen Hurts' knee is as bad as what Burrow's dealing with, but he could be a little bit slowed down.
And that would be a real problem.
Factors here for me.
Chris Jones, the defensive tackle, has not had a good year. He tends to show up in high-profile games and in a big way. And if Hurts' knee is compromised and Chris Jones is wrecking the pocket, that could be very problematic if Hurts doesn't have his requisite mobility. So all that said, I think the reason on a secondary level they want to run the ball is this version of the Philly defense, and we'll get to that side of the ball in a second, is not good. The Chiefs have an optimal matchup here. So the best interest of the Eagles, again, assuming their quarterback's less than 100%, no Dallas Goedert, advantage in a run game. This is the game they need, as we said, to get DeAndre Swift going, drain the play clock, shorten the game, and hopefully, in their eyes, the Chiefs punt the ball a few times. Who do you see having a big game on the Chiefs offense? We'll talk about the props later.
It has to be.
I'm sorry, the Eagles offense. Eagles offense.
I think it's going to have to be guys like a guy like A.J. Brown. So let's say it's not A.J. Brown, right? Because you have other pieces outside of Dallas Goedert who's not playing. Devonta Smith is the one that stands out to me because if Spags wants to take out A.J. Brown and you can slow down DeAndre Swift, the next man up has to be Devonta Smith. And I get Devonta Smith has that. We've talked about Devonta Smith a lot this year and why he isn't playing like he did last year, noting all the targets now being funneled to A.J. Brown. But this has to be one of those Devonta Smith games. We know he has it in him, and he's going to have to step up in prime time if Philly's going to win. I think it's going to have to come down to Devonta Smith.
And I agree with that. I do think that he's a very good DFS. Well, it's a single game slate, but he's that high ceiling guy that he could have that ceiling game. We could definitely see that. Anthony, A.J. Brown is on pace for 1,900 yards this season. And Tyreek, 2,077. Unbelievable. Christian McCaffrey's on pace for another 2,000 scrimmage yard season. Hadn't had one of those since 2018, maybe. We are seeing elite play from three megastars. Other side of the ball, Chiefs on the offense. So, first of all, last year when they faced in the Super Bowl, Philly was trying from the midseason on to patch up. They brought in Linval Joseph. They brought in Ndamukong Suh to patch up a horrible run defense. This year, the run defense is playing at a near elite level. Isaiah Pacheco, good for getting the initial yardage. Vision is not good. This is not a good matchup for Isaiah Pacheco. The Chiefs run blocking, we were excited about that in past years. This year, they're not opening the holes that they had opened in the past. And that said, Andy Reid's coming out of a bye. He realizes that Philly has this run defense. He realizes Pacheco's limitations. But where you can get to this defense, we mentioned earlier in the show, Darius Slay and James Bradbury were great last year. Cornerback play isn't always sticky year over year. Both of those players are having down years. We already know the middle of the field is a nightmare in coverage. So basically, the Chiefs should be able to attack them any way they choose through the air and have great success in it. What are your thoughts on how the Chiefs offense works in this game?
The obvious mismatch, as you're saying, you attack that Eagles secondary. My concern is, do they have what it takes in Kansas City? It's like coming off the bye week. Is this what makes it all click? Because they're going to have to, like, there's going to be times, and I get they're winning with defense right now, and the whole offensive landscape seems to be down in the NFL, but you're going to run into teams like Philly, San Francisco, Baltimore at times, Dallas, where if they're on, even Detroit, they can drop 30, 40 in a heartbeat. Can Kansas City dig themselves out of a hole or keep up if need be? We haven't really had to see that yet. Does it happen tonight? We know Andy Reid's a magician coming off the bye. Is this the game where maybe they really unleash somebody like Rashee Rice, who's had some flashes but hasn't really popped yet? Is this the game where Kelce starts looking like the Kelce we're used to seeing, because he's had some down spots himself? Maybe they unleash Jerick McKinnon, who's been a ghost. They have some of the playmakers still. They just haven't really looked the same, and I can't put my finger on why.
When you mentioned Jerick McKinnon, I always cite the people. I was listening to a beat reporter from the Chiefs who was affiliated with The Athletic, and the comment was, don't look for much from Jerick McKinnon in the first half of the season. They realize his age, they realize his durability. But in the second half of the season, as they ramp up for the playoffs, expect Jerick McKinnon to be a big part of the offense. And they have not used him much. He did have a long touchdown. He did have a long reception, both called back for holding or an eligible man downfield. I can't remember which. I think it may have been 1-1. But McKinnon is no less the explosive player he's been. And so yes, don't be surprised, and that mitigates opposition passers. What McKinnon does really well, when Mahomes breaks contain, McKinnon is an extremely intelligent player, and he knows exactly where Mahomes is going and where he needs to go within the zone defense to give Mahomes that window. And he also understands to get himself in position to run after the catch. It's really dynamic how that works. And Jerick McKinnon is not a dump-off guy. He's a legitimate route runner. They can actually run complex routes with him. Very excited about him. You brought up Rashee Rice. He had 56 or more yards in 3 of his last 4 games. They have not unleashed him. We hope as fantasy managers that Andy Reid goes that route and makes him a feature part because they really need that. But of course, coaches in the building know what they can expect reliability from what they're expecting a player to do. Don't know if there's a disconnect there, but our hope as fantasy players that he gets going here. So overall, how successful or unsuccessful are the Chiefs on offense tonight?
I think we're going to see a lot of points in this game. Historically, Mahomes and Hurts have played each other twice. There was 38-35 Super Bowl. Go back to 2021, 42-30, both in favor of Kansas City. And if history is going to repeat itself, I think we're going to see the Chiefs offense turn it on. And obviously, Jalen Hurts do what he has to do.
So let's talk about the betting on this. And Anthony, I'll point it out this way. When a line looks too good to be true, it probably is. The line in this game is 45.5. Lazy analysis says scoring's down this year. That's a good line. We've seen games 48 and more this past weekend. I wonder when we talked about the Eagles, if the books are thinking the Eagles are going to drain the clock and play ball control and shorten the game significantly. And if Mahomes isn't perfect and they have to punt twice, that could make this game way lower scoring than we think. I like your observation that there could be a lot of points. And if Swift is hitting explosives in the run game, and that might quicken up drives, and then Mahomes plays catch up. 45.5 is too good to be true. Is this a trap?
A trap for what? Over bettors or under bettors?
Is this a trap for the over? Because everybody's going to bet the over on 45.5. I mean, literally any casual is going to say, 45.5, Chiefs, Eagles, this is free money. That's going to be the thought. Free money. Do I lie?
No, but I don't see it as free money. I'm looking more at the trend than the line.
And I'm not arguing that, but I'm going to say that's going to be in the casual gambler's eye. This is going to be free money. 45.5 for the Chiefs and the Eagles. This game is going into the 60s. They're going to think that's the casual.
And being on primetime doesn't help the situation either, because a lot of these primetime games have gone under.
Yes. So I agree. There could be a lot of scoring here. This line is too good to be true. So what do I do with it?
I don't know. I personally am probably going to take. I'm going to go with my gut, and I'm going to go with me personally. I'm going to go with the over in this game.
I love it. I love it.
I could see. I get what the line's telling us and prime time, but I also know what two previous matchups between teams that aren't really that much different, right? Your quarterbacks are the same. A lot of the key pieces are still there. The head coaches, I believe, are the same since 2021. So I think we see a similar approach.
I love it. Now, betting on this game other than that. All right, so first of all, and look, I'm not a pop culture guy, okay? But I've noticed the narrative that Kelsey scored and Taylor Swift's the game. She's not going to be there tonight. She had to cancel. Oh. There was a tragedy at one of her concerts. Apparently, a person had a heart attack and passed away at an international concert she had. Heartbreaking. And so she rescheduled a concert there. So again, the most important thing is that it's very sad that tragedy happened to that poor young lady. Yeah. But Kelsey's been playing extremely well when Swift is at the game. He's minus 120 on an anytime TD. It's a really soft matchup in the middle of the field, but we've seen teams the last couple of weeks gang up on Kelsey. Does he score a touchdown here?
Yeah, I get the Taylor Swift narrative. I like the line. Like minus 120 is pretty solid for a Travis Kelce touchdown.
I think he's scoring.
Yeah. No, I'm in on Kelce, and he scored 2 out of 3 career games against Philly, including in the Super Bowl.
Now, any props you like, and I'll tell you the two that I like. And I like Rashee Rice over 43.5 yards. He's gone 56 or more in 3 of his last 4 games. I have to think he gets at least that much. The middle of the field is very, very soft for the Eagles. And not the outside's fine too, but the middle is tragically soft. So literally, he could get 3 catches, and I think he'll go over that because the yards after the catch would easily be there. And the other one I like is DeAndre Swift over 57.5 yards. Now, he doesn't regularly get that. He's only gone over that in half of the games since week 1 when he didn't play much. but he does get 14, 18 carries in almost every game. Nick Bolton, the middle linebacker, is on injured reserve. He's very fast, and that he's one that would really help in the run defense. But I do think they're going to ride Swifter. Those are the two I like. Any props that you either disagree with the ones I have, or are there any props you like?
No, something that I'm kind of liking is that the over on Devonta Smith's receiving yards. Again, you go back to the two previous games they played, 7 for 100, 7 for $122. So Devonta Smith has been heavily involved, and even AJ Brown, actually in both of the games that they've played all together in the past two matchups, both these wide receivers have popped, but AJ Brown has been the one scoring the touchdowns, where he scored a touchdown in both, where Devonta Smith has gone over his receiving yards and over 100 yards.
Now, in terms of the betting here, it's a 3-point line right now, and I look right before the show. Maybe that could change a little bit here or there. But if I'm doing the same game parlay, I'm going to I'm going to take an alternate line and move the Eagles from 3 to 7.5 at minus 300. Now, if I'm a little more liberal, you could push them to plus 4.5, because a lot of games end on the 4. That'd be minus 167. The line itself kind of scares me. I can see this game going either way. Do you like the line minus 3 or plus 3 for either side? Minus 3 Eagles, minus 3 Chiefs, or is there something in an alternate line? What do you prefer?
If I'm going to bet anything close to the main line, which is at 2.5 at FanDuel right now, I would probably kick it to 3 and play for a push, if anything. Like let's say, if you like Philly, I would bet buy the half a point and get it to 3. Protect yourself.
All right, sounds good. So who wins this game?
I'm going to take Kansas City at home. Mahomes 2-0 against Philly. And if this game was played in Philly, I think I roll on the Philly side. Arrowhead's a tough place to play. It's prime time Super Bowl rematch. I get Philly wants revenge. But Kansas City's been one of the hotter teams in football, and they haven't really played up to their own potential. And I think it comes out, and it's also hard to bet against Andy Reid coming off the bye. I think he has 2 career losses coming off a bye, which is unprecedented.
Yeah, he's insane. I mean, when I predict this game out score-wise, it goes to the over for me. I'm predicting it's like 27-23, like right there, and that goes over, but I'm very nervous about touching the over, because, again, when the line in my mind looks too good to be true, it like almost always loses. But my prediction on the game would bend to the over. Do you have a score prediction on this one?
I'll go I think it's going to be close. I'll go 30-26 going to Kansas City.
Love it. All right. So that's it for this one. Remember, Tuesday, we have our regular show at 11. We have a preview of all 4 holiday games at 2 Eastern on Tuesday. And then early start sit. We're going to do one Tuesday, 5 Eastern, because there's 4 holiday games, including the Black Friday game. And then there won't be shows Wednesday through Friday. Anthony, tell everybody where they can find you and your work.
You can find my day job here at RotoWire at the Gambling Group. Back end work, I'm here with Jim. I also write some content, betting content, and also my show at Face Off Sports Network, fffaceoff.com.
Yeah, make sure you're doing that, and you follow Anthony at The Real NFL Guru. Make sure you're doing that as well. People in the chat, Randy, I see you here. Thanks for being here. Master J, quick question, Anthony. Master J was, and I think somebody else maybe asked earlier, maybe Lee asked about, is Calvin Ridley a thing going forward, or is it a one-off?
I'm gonna buy back into Calvin Ridley. Like, he was my guy coming into the year, and I think coming out of the bye week, we see a little bit more involvement from somebody like Calvin Ridley, because that was an embarrassment against San Francisco 49ers. And if they're going to make some type of a legitimate Super Bowl run, you're not going to do it without involving your best wide receiver, who I believe is Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, the way they use him, and they moved him into stacked formations, they use him out of that static outside only. I think they lean into what worked, and I do think we see a better version of him. Charlene, thanks for being here. You said Tank Dell's a monster, and you said 11 out of 13 home games won this week. And if Anthony and I call this one right with Kansas City, that'll be 12 out of 14. Albert, good to see you here, and I think we're in good shape here. And all right, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving. If I don't see you, hopefully you're here for some Tuesday shows. For Anthony Cervino, I'm Jim Coventry. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy that game tonight.